The fact that Decathlon sells great down jackets quite cheaply must be just about the worst kept secret in hiking. But does that also hold true for their down sleeping bags? And while we're at it, how good are the synthetic versions of this bag? Let's find out. If you're confused by Decathlon's lineup, welcome to the club, right? In this case, the synthetic bags are labeled MT500. The down sleeping bags are the MT900. And you can get both of them in a bunch of different temperature ratings. And Simond or Simond is the new name of anything that was formerly 4 class. So mine are labeled 4 class because I took my time testing them, but they are the same product. Decathlon's website isn't exactly clear on this, but I'm pretty confident that the materials on both these sleeping bags are identical. They're both made from a 20D polyamide fabric, both inside and out. They both have the same double-sided zippers, which is a nice improvement. On the earlier models, they're not the best zippers ever, but they do the job, and the fact that you can open them from the inside out is super important, especially with these narrower designs. The foot box is large enough. That's not always the case for me. I have a size 47, so that is real nice. Another great feature is that they have a baffle along the whole length of the zipper, at least on this 0-degree version. This is where you often feel the cold coming in with cheaper sleeping bags, so that is definitely much appreciated. Overall, I think the temperature ratings on these are about right. I also love that Decathlon markets them based on the comfort rating. So if you take the 0-degree version, you know that it's going to work down to freezing temperatures. A lot of manufacturers use limit ratings for marketing, and that can be super confusing for people starting out. So for me, these are indeed warm enough, comfortably so, but you should know, number one, that I'm a guy. Women typically need slightly higher temperature ratings. Number two, I do prefer wearing long underwear inside sleeping bags. And number three, these official temperature ratings are tested in combination with sleeping mats with an R rating. That's the insulation value of 4.8. So you need to pair it with that kind of sleeping mat to get the advertised temperature. If you go and read the customer reviews on the Decathlon website, you'll notice that some people do complain about these not being warm enough. I think that's probably a combination of factors, but I bet that at least some of these people go out with a summer sleeping pad and expect their sleeping bags to keep them warm, and that's just not how that works. For people who are new to hiking, know that it's always smart to add a couple of degrees to these temperatures, not because Decathlon's cutting corners, but because the outdoors are unpredictable. That's, of course, part of why we like them. But that might mean that it'll be colder than expected. Maybe you don't make camp and you have to improvise for the night. Maybe somebody brings a bottle of rum and you get a bit too much to drink and have some trouble with the zipper. You never know. Now, double-clicking on the MT900, so the down version, I took a look at some of the best-selling sleeping bags across different brands that are in the same temperature range, and I noticed two things. One is that Decathlon indeed punches above its weight, costing about half as much as big brand sleeping bags with the same weight and temperature rating. It's definitely possible to get lighter bags or warmer ones at the same weight, but you'll probably end up spending significantly more, at least among the A brands. Second thing I noticed is that there is a fairly large amount of down in the MT900 compared to the competition, and it's fairly high loft down as well with a fill power of 800. In fact, if you multiply the down weight and the fill power, that gives you an estimation, an idea of the total loft, which is the thing that actually keeps you warm. And you can see that the MT900 just about takes the cake. The only one with more loft is the Fjallraven Keb. That is both heavier and twice as expensive. Now, obviously, this is not an exact science, but at least we know that Decathlon didn't skimp on down to get that price, down. What they did do is use duck down instead of goose down. Most A brands use goose. Duck is a bit cheaper. It can also sometimes have a slightly stronger natural smell, but I haven't noticed any of that here. In terms of construction, they work with box baffles, so no sewing right through both sides of the fabric in one go, because that can create cold spots. One thing that I did read in a couple of customer reviews was people complaining that the downfill in their bag wasn't well distributed. And that distribution is indeed important to any sleeping bag or quilt if you have the option of testing it out in the store, especially if you're buying the white undyed version version of this bag, it might be a good idea to bring a flashlight and do a quick visual check, see if everything is nicely distributed. Look, I only really have one big issue with the MT900, and that is the fact that they went with a very narrow mummy style headpiece where the zipper is close to your face. It is hard to reach. There's no room for your hands if you like them close to your face, and adjusting your pillow is like trying to pick up a phone inside a straitjacket. Now, I'll be the first to admit that this is very much personal preference. I'm probably just used to quilts and the freedom they provide, and this is just too restrictive for me. But if you look at other best-selling sleeping bags, you can tell that it is indeed narrower than most. And if you look at the designs by Simond before they were integrated in the Decathlon brand portfolio, or however you say that, in corporate speak, they've always had these kind of narrow designs. So I guess it's in their design DNA, and it does also have its advantages because obviously in any sleep system, the part where your head goes is always a hole that is at risk of leaking warmth. And the tighter it fits, the easier it is to keep that precious warmth in. And if you compare the MT900 to the synthetic version, you can see that it doesn't have the neck baffle or the draft collar that the MT500 does, presumably because with such a tightly fitting design, you don't really need that to keep the warmth in. Perhaps the best way to describe it is they sometimes call these mummy bags or sarcophagus sleeping bags. And I think the closer your sleeping position resembles a mummy lying in a sarcophagus, the more you'll love the MT900. If you're on your back, you don't move a lot, hands beside your body, you'll be golden. The MT500 is a very solid offer with honestly very few things to remark on feature-wise. I would be hard-pressed to find anything lacking here except for, well, weight and compressibility. Those are obviously nowhere near as good as down. Even the hardware on the compression sacks is a little chunkier than on the MT900, as if to say, yeah, we know we're not going to be competing on weight. It packs down to about 12.9 liters versus 7.5 for the down version. That might also be a consideration depending on the kind of backpack you own and how much room you have to spare. There are some things that synthetic bags are inherently better at, besides obviously being more animal friendly. One is performance in wet conditions, especially compared to non-hydrophobic down. And I don't know for sure, but I doubt the down in the MT900 is treated against moisture. I think Decathlon would mention that on their website. Synthetic is also easier to wash, and it has fewer potential issues with fill distribution. I suppose if you're strictly searching for a car camping bag and you really value durability, that 20D outer fabric might actually be a little on the flimsy side. If you buy this for your kids going to Scouts camp and you want it to last for a decade, you could probably opt for something more rugged. But at least this one is backpackable, so it might also save you from having to buy a second bag somewhere down the road. Wrapping up, in making these sleeping bags, Decathlon has made some choices for us. If you want the lightest, most compressible sleeping bag they offer, you're getting a mummy bag with a narrow head end. If you don't mind that shape, especially if you sleep on your back, I don't really have any reason to dissuade you from getting it. You're getting a lot of down for the money and a solid amount of warmth per gram. I would have liked a down version of the MT500 since that's just a great synthetic sleeping bag with a comfortable shape and very few compromises. So if weight and compressibility are not important to you, if you go car camping, if you aren't going to carry these on your back anyway, there's no real reason to pay double for the down version. The synthetic version really is an excellent sleeping bag. Once you're in it, you will not dream of being in the down version. When it's on your back, of course, that is a different question. And if you're just getting into hiking, my advice would be a bit more nuanced. I think a lot of people buy Decathlon gear when they're not quite certain how serious they are about hiking. You know, the way when you first have kids, you go to IKEA, you buy the cheapest furniture because you're like, well, we'll see how it goes. Maybe I'll find out I'm more of a dog person anyway, which is, of course, perfectly reasonable. But the first time I went hiking, I bought a collection of these reasonably priced things, and I ended up with a backpack that was simply too heavy to enjoy. And a bunch of the stuff that I bought for that first multi-day hike, I never used again. And the MT500 at 1,450 grams does risk being one of those perfectly fine products that you replace early on in your hiking career. So, food for thought. I hope that was helpful. Let us know about your experiences with these products in the comments, or if you have any recommendations for products in the same price range. Those are always helpful. Thanks so much for watching, and see you around.